who do you look at around the league as you're studying and say, we're going to have to run through them?
Celtics.
No one in the West.
Nah, I'm fine in the West.
That's the moment. Right there. That was December 2022. Memphis was the second seed. Ja was an MVP candidate. The Grizzlies weren't just a team, they were a problem. But if you look back at the freeze frame, you aren't looking at the start of a dynasty. You're looking at the peak of a mountain that was about to crumble. Since that interview, the Grizzlies have a losing record of 126 and 138. They haven't won a single playoff series, and that confidence Ja was talking about, it didn't just age poorly. It became a $200 million burial ground. While Ja was looking at the Celtics as his only threat, the rest of the West was building monsters. And while the rest of the league got better, the Memphis got quiet. Okay, let's actually look at who Ja Morant was looking at when he said that line. The 2022 Western Conference was a death trap. You had the Phoenix Suns coming off a 64-win season, the best they've ever been. You had the defending champs, Golden State Warriors. Yes, the same team that had just bullied Memphis out of the playoffs months ago. Nikola Jokic was on a back-to-back MVP run. And with Jamal Murray back, they were a machine Memphis had no answer for. Plus, Luka Doncic was fresh off a series where he single-handedly dismantled the third seed. But Memphis, they thought their youth was a shield. They thought being the second seed meant the throne was theirs by default. They didn't realize the West wasn't just evolving. It was turning into a meat grinder. While Ja was watching the Celtics, the monsters in his own backyard were sharpening their teeth. But that's not even the scary part. See, you can game plan for a 64-win team. You can double team Jokic, you can build a wall for Giannis, but you can't game plan for a house that's burning down from the inside. While the West was sharpening their teeth, the Grizzlies were losing their minds. In 2022, they were the hunters. By 2024, they were the headlines. 2 gun-related suspensions in 3 months. 25 games gone. Defining a West swagger turned into a legal defense. And then the injuries. 578 games lost to injury in a single season. A world record nobody wanted. They went from the most durable young core in the league to a revolving door of 10-day contracts and what-ifs. The monsters in the West didn't kill the Grizzlies. They just stood back and watched them do it to themselves.
With some breaking news out of Memphis, the Grizzlies announced that they have parted ways with head coach Taylor Jenkins. Jenkins spent almost 6 years in Memphis and has the most wins in franchise history while at the helm.
Thomas Isolo. Before he was tasked with saving the Grizzlies, he was the king of a different world. In Europe, Isolo didn't just win, he dominated. Champions League titles, Euro Cup trophies, he turned teams into machines. And he did it with a style of basketball the NBA wasn't ready for. He didn't get the Memphis job by being a player's coach. He got it because he was a tactical machine who didn't care about your feelings. He cared about his math. But in the NBA, math doesn't account for a superstar's ego. Isolo is from Finland. In Europe, he was known for being cold and brutally honest. He doesn't care about your highlights or your sneakers. He cares about his system. He treats players like numbers on a spreadsheet. But Memphis is built on energy. It's built on Ja Morant's rhythm, his swagger, and his freedom to be Ja. The biggest fight was over hockey subs. Isolo doesn't let stars play 12 minutes straight. He pulls you out every 4 minutes to keep the pace at 100%. For a superstar like Ja, who needs time to get hot, this was like being put in a cage. The tension finally snapped on Halloween night 2025. After a collapse against the Lakers, Isolo did the one thing you don't do to an NBA superstar. He called him out in front of the whole team. He told Ja his effort was killing the team. He told him he wasn't a leader. After that, Ja went to the media and told them to go.
Go ask the coaching staff.
You could do differently, I guess?
Go ask them. They had a whole spiel in here, so.
You feel like you should play more?
Go ask the coaching staff. Should I play more or not?
24 hours later, the Grizzlies suspended their franchise player. The locker room wasn't just divided. it was a war. When an NBA locker room goes to war, the superstar usually wins. The coach gets packed up, a player-friendly guy comes in, and everybody moves on. But the Memphis front office, they chose the coach, they chose the math. And on February 3rd, 2026, they pulled the pin on a grenade.
It was just announced officially that the Jazz are bringing in Jaren Jackson Jr. from the Memphis Grizzlies in an 8-player trade that surprised just about everyone earlier today.
Jaren Jackson Jr., the former Defensive Player of the Year, the anchor, the energy, and the literal soul of this team, gone. Shipped to Salt Lake City in an absolute blockbuster trade. They traded Ja Morant's best friend to swap the franchise cornerstone for Taylor Hendricks, Walter Clayton Jr., and future picks. But the real kicker, they walked away with a massive $28.8 million trade exception, the largest in NBA history. Think about that. They traded an all-star caliber player in his prime just to create a giant empty bank account. And they weren't done. Desmond Bane already packed up and sent to Orlando. The most lethal young core in the league didn't just split up, they evaporated. And that's the real tragedy of this entire downfall. Memphis was supposed to be what OKC is right now. Think about it. Back in 2022, the Grizzlies had the exact same blueprint. They had the terrifying young core, the endless depth, the draft assets, and the unbothered swagger that the Oklahoma City Thunder just used to completely hijack the league. Memphis was next in line for the throne. Instead, OKC built a 64-win juggernaut while the Grizzlies built a luxury prison. They finished the season with a miserable 25-57 record, rolling through a revolving door of 10-day contracts while Ja Morant watched from a system he openly hates. His efficiency went down to career lows. 39% from the field, 23% from three. The guy who used to fly over 7-footer is grounded. The Fine in the West ego stayed, but the Fine in the West game completely vanished. They told us they were fine. They danced, they talked, they thought their youth was a shield, but the NBA doesn't wait for anyone. The Western Conference didn't have to hunt down the Grizzlies. Memphis just burned out themselves. They just stood back and watched the Memphis do it to themselves.